I've mentioned about February 18 as a day when we commemorate the courage and the patriotic spirit of the leader of the revolutionary movement in Kenya, Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi. And this day, we want to crown it by awakening the minds of our people to the real situation, on the ground. And that's why we want to spice it up with the launch of the book, Mwakenya, Unfinished Revolution.
I would also like to invoke our ancestors in the names of Maurice Bishop, who was our revolutionary leader, Marshal Dedan Kimathi, who was the leader of the Mau Mau revolutionary movement. So for many African countries, and when I say African, I mean countries that are predominantly made up of continental Africans, but also people of African descent. So I do consider Grenada and many of the Caribbean islands to be African countries. So the Grenada Revolution lasted from about 1979 to 1983. It was the first socialist revolution in a predominantly African and English-speaking Caribbean country. There was buy-in from the majority of the people because we were all sick and tired of being harassed and killed by what was then a dictatorial regime of Eric Gary, who was the first prime minister of our island after our independence in 1974. So Grenada's revolution sadly imploded on October 19th, 1983, with the assassination of our Prime Minister, Maurice Bishop, and many of his comrades. And then we saw the US empire invade our island of 110,000, which, by the way, at that time was closer to 85,000. So you had US empire invade our small island on October 25th, 1983, under Ronald Reagan's government. And they claimed to bring back democracy to our island. So hopefully tonight, what I'm hoping to see happen is different ways in which we can make critical connections between the December 12 movement and current politicized movements happening in Kenya and what's happening in the Caribbean. We acknowledge in Grenada and in many other places, including here tonight, which is why you have this event, the importance of remembering, the importance of telling our own histories, because many times our histories are told by other people.
We are asserting the fact that a people without understanding their history cannot be able to shape their destiny. We are claiming the space that our forefathers fought for, and what we call the second liberation we have been fighting for, the space for us to organize ourselves into a society that cares for the weak, even as it gives room for the strong. A society that minds the children and the adults as well. A society that guarantees an education that is enabling of each one of us to realize their destiny, to realize their potential. These and many other ideals are what our forefathers like Dedan Kimathi, Mekatilili Wamenza, Koitalel Arap Samoei, Pio Gamapinto, Makan Singh, Karemi Ndudu, GPO, all these compatriots, we can keep naming them. This is what they stood for. What has happened over the years is that the true history and the true memories have been buried. They've been denied our children. They've been denied to us, those who didn't live then, so that we can't borrow from them how to continue the struggle to fulfill our mission here on earth, which is for each and every one of us to realize their potential in their own way and right. And so today, as we commemorate the Field Marshal, we are telling the current government that what the last regime did was just a token, to put a monument on Kimathi Street. We appreciate it, we acknowledge it, but we are also saying that we need much more. And we need to be given the space to exercise the rights that we have enshrined in the new constitution. For if they were alive today, that is exactly what they would ask of us to do.
Today, we celebrate Kimathi Day. Okay, I would like to introduce some people. We were with them in prison, and others who are comrades and friends. I'll start with Onyango Law. Just there. When Onyango was a student, he was sophomore. He was a kid when actually he joined me in Kamete prison, and he fought back, although he was very young. The other person I would like to introduce is he writes newspaper, is Peter Kimani. Peter used his pen to let it speak for itself. And he playing a very important part when it comes to some gathering like this, because he gets us to the newspapers. Alikuwa student leader wa University of Nairobi, na again, a brave man. That's what. Ungweni na yeye, tulikuwa na yeye Kamete tu. Sisi ni watu wa mbele kukataa udictatorship wa Moi na KANU. Na yeye alikuwa kijana, na alikuja Kamete. He was fired, and basically we stood together to reject what was going in this country. I don't know what I can say about Oyugi. It's a lot to say. Oyugi was with us, with so many people writing this book. Actually, the people who have contributed a lot for this. Oyugi, we love you too. When everything went wrong, there are young people who refused to go. They were underground here. They refused to leave the country, and actually, basically, they stay here, and they fought back. And we love you too. We started from a University of Nairobi and the Kenyatta University. There were no other people who were talking. People are scared. People are arrested. People are killed. But we decided it is about time we stand up and we say no to neo-colonialism and imperialism. We are told that the people who actually started this struggle is actually Matiba and Rubia, and of course, Raira. Our names are not there, even in the newspaper. We started in December 1974. We get together. We are not many. We are very few people who actually started. And this was Kamoji Wachiira. We are 5 of us. Maina Kenyatta, and somebody called Amin Kassam, Awiti, Adhu Awiti, the Workers' Party of Kenya. And we decided we are going to make underground movement. We are going to recruit people, and that's the party we started. And basically it became, you never know, nobody ever know actually it was not. But we are ourselves, we are actually a communist party. It was a communist party in Kenya, but we are calling it the Workers' Party of Kenya. About 5 of us. Later on, we joined with others, people like you and others. And we started actually going underground. Most of the time, me and the Yugi were assigned to distribute papers or leaflet outside in Nairobi and other places. We are comrades by that time. And the history it went on. It was the first organized movement in Kenya underground, and it was the first organization which produced a paper to challenge the state. There's somebody I missed, I didn't say it. Koigwa Mwere was part actually of the 5 people who actually started this movement. But it came to transformation of this movement that by 1982, we continue working underground, produce papers, leaflets, and other things, and fighting back. And then the movement changed to become what you call, and the popular name is called DTM, December 12 Movement. And when we start that, we came out actually to challenge everybody this Pabana. This is how we started. And I'm telling you, it was we are scared too. But we took part. We thought probably we can actually challenge the state. And we did that very carefully. In 1982, in June, we are arrested. And the most actually, there were intellectuals in university. Wachiira, Kamoji Wachiira, Edward Oyugi, Alamin, and Maina Kenyatta, and of course, Mukaro Nganga. But Mukaro Nganga was not part of the underground movement. But he was arrested was that. But we are not arrested because we are underground. We are arrested because according to the state, we are teaching revolutionary violence. The government did not know that there was actually underground movement called, they did not know. And we never asked about that. And later, that's the transport. So we left, most important, what we left actually is the Central Committee was not known. What actually was known is actually what we call March 2nd, which actually we can call it the coordinating section of the party, which actually now is called December 12 Movement. And of course, there was young people who had to take over because we are not there. And this was actually the time Gogi was not there, which was a part of the movement. He was in London. He was not arrested. He himself has to form another center with Yusuf and Abdallah, and others, and Wajiro Kihoro, and others in London. And it became very powerful movement in London, actually speaking on behalf of Kenyans. And Yusuf was there too. So what was left here when we were arrested is actually younger people. The most important that people came as a spark of December 12 movement. It was two people actually continue with this movement. It was actually Kebashi Agato and of course Chitachi or George Chitachi. They called themselves the Central Revolution Council of DTM. And they continue working of all time. But it came again, the other stage, the third stage, which in 1985 was another transformation. The name of the movement was changed to what we call now Mwakenya. And the problem here, it changed its style, strategy, and everything else we are doing. It started that to force people, basically to give people oath to become member of the movement. The movement had to be exposed to the secret police and others. So a lot of people were arrested because they were taken. The group which started the movement, which actually started the oath, was actually the Githongori group, was led by Young Kihara. He's not alive, he's dead. The movement is supposed to, the oath was supposed like the oath of the Mau Mau movement, that people had to take oath and basically to become member of the movement. And forgetting that actually Mau Mau movement was another period of our history where people could not write or speak or read. And it basically was based in Central Province, not other places. It was a Kikuyu tradition oath. So this was changed. But ourselves, we had actually gone beyond that. People have to take to become ideologically involved. We had actually to recruit people and take them to classes to understand the ideology of Marxism. And we are the first people in this country to bring Marxism in this country and to make it a vehicle for the next struggle for democracy in this country. Other people were basically arrested, and so many people, so we felt prisoners and others left for US, United States, and other places. But the only thing I want to say about this thing, if I go back a little bit, there's one thing we decided we never do. One, we never accept foreign funding, finance. We say we'll never accept. The people who actually make revolution are not sponsored by foreigners. They do not take money from imperial states. They don't take. So the stage which actually we have gone through again is the stage which the younger people have taken over to fight for democracy. But the democracy which we've been fighting is actually to use NGOs and also used to use donor money actually to carry on in the struggle for democracy. We thought democracy means food. It means that people equal social justice. It means that that the land should be divided among Kenyans. Everybody has a part of it. And it means that people of Turkana should not die because they don't have food. Because our country can feed East Africa if we put it together. There's no question about that. So I want to go down to basically to finish what I was saying. It was introduction because today is actually Yusuf day, and we want to give him the time actually to speak. Yusuf and I know each other from way back. I came from prison, and the people who welcomed me actually were Yusuf, Thiong'o, Abdulatif, and the others. That time I went to London. We have a conference on Kenya. And that time I met Yusuf, and we became comrades and friends. From what I know about Yusuf is his courage and his love for this country, and that he is not scared or afraid to speak his mind. And when actually he joined the movement, he was elected, not elected, he became the chairman of what was called Kenya, which actually he became the president. And remember those days, what happened for us and Gogi and the others was very easy to talk about Moi. They say, we make noise. When he used to join, the papers everywhere in this country, they talk about him. The secret police went to his home to see the parents, to harass the parents, and to do all kinds of things. They couldn't believe that we could join as Kenyans to fight for democracy. And he joined. And he has a lot of courage. And what we need is people like Yusuf, people like others actually, people who stood up and argue that actually we need democracy. What we have created, because we have fought hard, is actually to create a democratic space. So the struggle for democracy is going to take long, and we're going to fight for this. So what we have is democratic space, that we can have demonstrations, that we can gather here and talk without being harassed by anyone. And that's democratic space. Democracy means justice, social justice, that everybody in Kenya should have enough to eat should have a place to build his own house. This is what we call democracy.
Kenya has long attracted foreign predators in search of slaves and resources to exploit. Yusufu bin Hassan dealt a major blow to Portuguese colonial design when he defeated a force of Portuguese invaders in Mombasa. Portugal was then a preeminent European power. It was the America of that time. In 1884-85, leading European powers, including Britain, France, Portugal, Germany, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands, gathered in Berlin, where they agreed on a grand plan to carve up the African continent, thus sparking the scramble for Africa, a new imperial conquest and colonization of African territory. Kenya came under British control. They came to take the land, exploit the resources and the labor of the country under the pretext of civilizing the heathens, primitives and savages, and spread Christianity. By 1920, Kenya was converted into a British colony, and so started the long struggle for independence and self-determination. All those years, the Kenyan people were denied basic human rights, super exploited, and their traditions and culture eradicated and replaced by an Anglo-centric culture. The population was overworked, overtaxed, and humiliated, leading to widespread poverty and hunger. The struggle for democracy and equality and social justice in Kenya has unfolded over many decades, starting most importantly in recent history with the Mau Mau, the nationalist strivings of the 1960s, and the long-drawn clamor for multi-party democracy and constitutional reform over the last 25 years. There have been heroes and heroines celebrated and immortalized in song, in poetry, and even statuettes erected in their honor. But one epoch in that epic story of Kenya's freedom fight has almost been erased by later-day chroniclers of our history. That is the period of the resistance movement against the KANU one-party tyranny from the late 1970s to the early 1990s. This is the golden age of the Kenyan underground movement, when disciplined, militant, patriotic comrades were fighting for a new Kenya. They didn't just want change in Kenya. They demanded a revolutionary transformation of Kenya, an upheaval in Kenya that will bring the oppressed from their own downtrodden status to the top, where the ordinary women and men of Kenya, the poor and the marginalized youth, the exploited villagers in the peasant countryside, and the disenfranchised workers in the urban slums would be holding the steering wheel, guiding Kenya to a new democratic future. The leaders of the clandestine struggles were revolutionaries committed to a socialist vision. It is their organized and steely opposition which was to lay the seeds for the powerful, open, and massive democratic upsurge of the early 90s, when new leaders from the faith movement, the lawyers and professionals, the journalists and other middle-class reformers could now demand the return of political pluralism, the formation of a broad church of opposition. Yet when in 2010, when Kenyans celebrated the launch of the new constitution, hardly anybody mentioned them. It was as if they did not exist, had never lived, let alone striking a single blow for progressive change. Maina earlier in his life, when he was a student in the United States, was the president of the Pan-African Student Organization. He was involved in the Black Power movement. He came home in 1974 and secretly formed the underground movement, the first underground movement, as he has told us this evening. And he was a student activist. Maina has taught at Kenyatta University and was for many years a professor at Hunter's College in New York. He's a political activist who was jailed for 6 years by the Moi KANU regime. He was kept in a small dark room and almost lost his sight. Thank God he didn't, because he would not have published the many successful publications that he has launched. He's the director and the founder of the Mau Mau Research Center, dedicated to collecting, analyzing, interpreting, and publishing the history of progressive, anti-imperialist, anti-colonial, and anti-new colonial movements and organizations in Kenya. He's the author of some of the most outstanding publications on the history of the Kenyan people, including Thunder from the Mountain, Mau Mau, A Revolution Betrayed, Kenya, A Prison Notebook, Mother Kenya, Letters from Prison 1982 to 1988, A Season of Blood, Poems from the Kenyan Prisons. Indeed, Professor Kenyatta, a committed writer and researcher, is the people's historian. His seminal book, Mau Mau, A Revolution Betrayed, narrated the heroic struggle of the Kenyan Freedom Land and Freedom Army against the British forces and their local collaborators. He has enormously contributed to our knowledge and understanding of this important movement and its crucial role in the anti-colonial campaign of the Kenyan people. He has done it again with his latest publication, Mwakenya, The Unfinished Revolution, on the neo-colonial period, documenting the repressive actions and policies of the KANU regimes and the responses of the Kenyan people, which led to the rise of several underground movements and the struggle for radical change, climaxing in the birth of Mwakenya and leading to the demise of the Moi KANU regime in 2002. This is a massive book. The 440 pages is divided into 6 parts. After the preface and introduction, part 1 deals with the birth of the Kenya underground movement in the mid-1970s, around the time of the brutal and grisly murder of the populist parliamentarian JM Kariuki. Drawing its inspiration and legacy from the Mau Mau struggle of the 1950s, the December 12 movement, DTM, derived its name from the date Kenya achieved flag independence. DTM, in turn, was the baby of the clandestine Workers' Party of Kenya, whose founding leaders were Maina wa Kenyatta himself, Kamoji Wachiira, Adhu Awiti, Amin Kassam, Koigi wa Umere, and later Willy Mutunga, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Alamin Mazrui, Edward Oyugi. Alamin Mazrui, Edward Oyugi, Shiraz Durrani, Sultan Somjee, Ngodho wa Kariuki, Deloitte Ngugi wa Miri, Kuria Muriimi, Kariuki Kiboi, and others. The fledgling underground movement took an anti-imperialist, pro-socialist stance, ideology anchored in Marxism-Leninism Maoist thought. The movement was to later launch communication organs and newspapers, journals and publications like Mwanguzi, Pambana, and Cheche. At the cultural level, the author informs us that DTM was the organizing force behind such militant and patriotic plays like Ngahika Ndenda and The Trial of Dedan Kimathi, which I was fortunate to see when I was a student here in the National Theatre, which is right opposite here. The movement mobilized progressive lecturers, organized well-attended public symposia at the campuses of the burning issues of the day. It recruited students and open-minded and radical members of the petty bourgeoisie into its secret ranks. Before its top leadership was arrested and detained in June 1982, DTM, through its secret organizations, typed, written, cyclostyled, photocopied, and stapled newspaper called Pambana, which was surreptitiously circulated under the very nose of the secret police. It was one of the campaigning documents that we have used as part of our work when we were in exile. The movement had arrived in the ranks of the opposition at a time when the Moi KANU one-party dictatorship was smugly assuring itself that it had politically throttled all the voice of dissent. Kenyatta reveals how even behind prison walls and exile, DTM continued to grow, recruiting within its ranks a militant university student jailed on sedition charges. The author states that in 1984, the movement morphed from the founder members of DTM mentioned in the book. The rest of part 1 is taken by a detailed narrative as well as very frank analysis and critique of the later history of the movement when, according to the author, it was taken over by what he refers to as opportunists, sectarians, and ultra-leftists, who later transformed it into Mwakenya, with at first disastrous consequences. Kenyatta also records the inner party debate, struggle, and ratification, which later led to the expulsion of those elements. Part 2, which spans 137 pages, showcases the DTM publications from 1974 to 1985, reproducing several copies of Mwanguzi, Pambana, Mpatanishi, occasional anonymous leaflets, and other communiques and statements from the movement. Part 3 provides a selection of Mwakenya documents covering the period from 1987 to 2001. Part 4 lays bare in the public domain in the first time outside the closed circle of Kenyan exiles and activists in Britain and the United States. Excerpts from the archives of Kenya, formed in the UK in the 1980s, a speech delivered by Abdulatif Abdallah at the 7th Pan-African Congress held in Kampala in April 1994. Abdulatif took over the leadership of the movement from me. He became the chairman of Umoja Ukenya and had continued to advance the work of the organization. Part 5, beginning on page 417, is the reproduction of the 2001 Mwakenya Harare Declaration. That document, among other things, resolved to clarify the name of the party and called it DTM Mwakenya, so as to reflect correctly the history, continuity, and the mainstreams that have gone into making it. Part 6 is an appendix consisting of the DTM Mwakenya study guide, broken down to organizational aspects like the concepts of the unity of theory and practice, democratic centralism. Mwakenya, the Unfinished Revolution, is a very welcome, path-breaking book, filling a void that has yawned in Kenyan historiography. One hopes that Kenyatta's book will spur other political activists to pen their own stories and further enrich our understanding of this important period, a period of intense repression and resistance. And I'm appealing to some of you who are here, Odor, Oyugi, Mwandawiro, Onyango, to write that history so that it becomes part of our reality in everyday life. With these remarks, for your careful, I launch Mwakenya, the Unfinished Revolution, and thank you very much for your careful.
Having listened to Mheshimiwa Yusuf and Professor Wakinyati, we have learned some of the things that we need to know about the struggle. I want to say that the struggle is not yet over. As I'm speaking now, we are having 4 of our comrades, Comrade Gashe Gashi, Comrade Wilfred Olal, Comrade John Kome, and Comrade Nelson Mandela, who were arrested last week during a demonstration, and they were taken to court, and we were surprised that a magistrate called Inderito actually gave them a cash bail of 200,000 shillings just for participating in a procession. These are clear indications that the struggle that Kimathi stood for is yet to be realized. And that's why as I stand here, I want to challenge all the comrades here that even as we mark the anniversary of Dan Kimathi, we have to know that the home guards who put Kimathi inside, who arrested him, are the ones who are today masquerading as the freedom fighters. This event has really opened our eyes. And I want to say that it is an occasion for us to get the independent Kenyan spirit that brought nationalism and that ensured that all comrades stood together to fight for the independence of this country. I want to urge all of us to stand firm and ensure that devolution, because when Kimathi wanted part with the people, he wanted devolution. And to us in the civil society, devolution is actually the revolution. There are attempts by the central government to dismantle devolution. What we are saying is that as the freedom fighters of today, as the Mau Mau of today, we have to stand firm and ensure that the devolution that we fought for and is in the constitution is protected, because that is the only way Kenyans can attain social and economic justice for this country. Thank you very much.
We need to talk about all the things which went right, as well as all the things which went wrong. It is a fact that many of our comrades today are meeting here for the first time. People have not spoken to each other, because they are unresolved issues. And we're all comrades, like Ndugu said, we who are Democrats, who are revolutionary, who are socialists, we need to unite, we need to come together. But one of the things which will purify our unity is a thorough, like Ndugu Kenyatta started, examining our past in order to move forward. Part of our past was very beautiful, but part of it was very sordid, was very ugly. Mwalimu, I'm trying to criticize you here. Don't be tough too much on the NGOs and the human. We are the people who are in those human rights organizations. I've not stopped being a communist, but I'm a human rights activist. We are not, as you mentioned in your last book, we are not nurses at the bedside of capitalism. And so, I would like to urge you to broaden your analysis to know that sometimes we as revolutionaries, sometimes we retreat, we become part of the broad movement. We don't stop being socialist. We don't stop being revolutionaries. So, we are not sellouts. In fact, quite the contrary. And sometimes it's very important even to retreat, even to the churches, to the mosques, to the youth organizations, to be able to participate in broadening our democratic struggle.
Ndugu yangu Maina wa Kinyati, tulikuwa pamoja huko Kamiti na tulipata shida sana. Hata yeye aligandamizwa sana, lakini naweza kumwambia kwa muhtasari, huyu ni mtu wa nguvu sana. Na alikataa kuinua mikono kabisa wakati tumekuwa naye gerezani. Hata nina poem mkubwa sana ambayo nimemwandikia kumsifu. Vile vile nampongeza sana kwa hii kazi yote ya kuendelea kuandika historia ya Kenya kutoka kwa msimamo wa wananchi wa Kenya. Alafu vile vile naomba kumhongera sana ndugu yangu pia mheshimiwa Yusuf kwa kweli kuendelea na msimamo mpaka sasa sana. Kwa kweli hata kuja hapa kuja kuzindua hichi kitabu ni heshima kubwa sana na dalili sana bado unaendelea na mapambano. Shukrani kubwa sana.
Now, these strategies that we've actually been using to fight the imperialist system, I think they are already full at their databases, and they are each and every time we try to reuse them. Actually, we tend to find that they are not being progressive. Actually, going to the streets doesn't make an impact, and many other things that we are doing that were being done at those moments are failing to have their impact. And it's high time that we actually re-strategize and see on how best we can consolidate and come up with other progressive measures of fighting this imperialist system, other than using these other old mechanisms that are actually at the moment not bearing results. Thank you.
Si maana kwamba tumefika. Ndugu yetu Abdulatif Abdalla alikuwa anatuhimiza kila wakati tukianza kuregea wakati tulipokuwa wahamishoni, akisema kwamba wasafiri msichoke, safari ni ndefu. Kwa hivyo hii safari ni ndefu na hatuwezi kufikia kilele cha mahitaji ya watu wa Kenya bila harakati. Na harakati sio tu kushika bunduki na kupiga risasi. Harakati ina njia nyingi na nafasi hizo zipo zinakubalika katika katiba yetu ya nchi hii. Tuna uhuru huo, nafasi hiyo muipanue zaidi, tuisukume, tuifikishe mahali ambapo tutawapa wanaharakati wengine. Mara nyingi watu wananiuliza Ngugi anafanya nini, Abdulatif anafanya nini, Shiraz Durrani anafanya nini, fulani anafanya nini. Usiulize fulani anafanya nini, ujiulize wewe mwenyewe unaifanyia nini nchi yako na watu wako kubadilisha hali ya mambo ilivyo sasa hivi. Na hiyo ndio muhimu. Watu wengine wananiuliza katika harakati pia tumeingia na tukaenda njia mbalimbali. Wengine tumekuwa walimu, wengine tumekuwa tunafundisha, wengine mimi nimekuwa mbunge. Watu wanauliza kwa nini msiwe katika mkondo moja? Ni vizuri tuwe katika mkondo moja, lakini ni muhimu zaidi ikiwa katika kila wakati tunaendelea na hiyo kazi. Mimi nimeamua kutumikia watu wa Kamkunji na naona kwamba hiyo kazi ndogo ninayofanyia inabadilisha hali ya maisha katika Kamkunji. Hakuna nchi ambayo imeendelezwa na watu wa nje. Hakuna nchi ambayo imekombolewa na watu wa nje. Kenya itakombolewa na itaendelezwa na Wakenya. Na hakuna watume kutoka nje. Kwa hivyo nawashukuru tena kwa wakati wenu. tukutane tena katika mazungumzo kama haya na majadiliano kama haya, na namshukuru mwalimu Maina wa Kenyati kwa kutuleta pamoja, wengi wetu ambao hatujaonana kwa muda mrefu sana, na nataraji kwamba kutakuwa na fursa nyinginezo za kutuleta pamoja tena kwa manufaa ya nchi yetu na watu wetu. Asanteni sana.